On this edition of the program, Trudeau out, Zuckerberg relaxes the rules at Meta, and much more. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics podcast for January 8th, 2024. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here as the government has come back to life. It has been revived. We have bills passing the House. We have the big question of exactly how and where Donald Trump's agenda will be passed. We're going to have hearings on the secretaries, the cabinet selections for Trump coming up next week. But with all that happening, we still did have a world leader that stepped down. And so that's going to take precedent as we are in our nascent slowly bubbling. If it was like a pot of water, you'd see just like one of those little bubbles kind of like racing around the bottom. But until then, someone's at a full boil. It's Canada. Justin Trudeau's out. Evan Scrimshaw's here. The shakeup has occurred in the Great White North, and so we need to bring on our friend, Evan Scrimshaw. He has been leading the charge for Justin Trudeau to resign, and lo, on Monday he did. What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
So last time you had me on, we talked about the finance minister's resignation and the sort of confounding chaos. Over the holidays, basically the entire Liberal caucus had said, you can go or we're going to knife you. A caucus meeting was set for Wednesday. That was scheduled to be 6 hours long. And my understanding, my reporting, is that caucus meeting was you can leave before this meeting, or you're not leaving the room until you agree to resign. And he is taking the jump before being pushed approach.
Why did it get here? And, well, let's start there before we go into what's next. Why did it get here with him?
Because his polling got bad and kept getting worse. He tried a big spending budget with a lot of nominally popular headline-grabbing policies that didn't move the needle. He lost 2 special elections in safe Liberal seats that he had no business losing. And at some point, caucus self-preservation and the desire for them to win their seats again, and the fact that he was polling before the resignation, he was polling 20-ish points down on the Conservative leader, who nobody in Liberal politics thinks is impressive or running a great sort of, stealth campaign or anything, and is now, 25 points down after the resignation. But the problem was that Trudeau has been tuned out by the electorate. The electorate support, if you ask them in a vacuum, do you support these policies? People like them. They think they're good. They think they're, taxing the rich and they're populisty and whatever. And the second they find out Justin Trudeau proposed them, they don't care.
They don't like him.
They don't care. They're just done with him.
Yeah.
And the party finally came to the realization, 6 months late, but, better to show up late than never at all, that they are that they need a new messenger to try and save the furniture.
How long had he been in that slot, been prime minister?
He became Liberal leader in the first half of 2013. He won the 2015 election in October. So just over 9 years as PM, and he'll have been Liberal leader for about 13 years by the time he actually leaves.
All right, rank these 3 then. Why he's gone on Monday as we record this. The fact that he's just been in too long, and eventually anybody who just stays in a position is going to get old to the public. Number 2, the fact that especially in parliamentary politics, incumbents have just been eaten alive globally. Obviously, we've seen that here in the United States as well, but we don't have the same kind of system. Or things that Trudeau has done over the last year. Rank those three.
So probably the global anger definitely is a big part of it. So I'd say that's number one. Number two, I would put the sort of specific decisions of Trudeau in second, because the thing about Canadian leaders is, yes, a lot of Canadian leaders lose after like a decade, but the guy that Justin Trudeau replaced, Stephen Harper, he was unpopular by the end of his decade in office, but he was like 30% of the vote, 100 seats unpopular, not 20% of the vote and like 10 seats unpopular. Which is where Trudeau currently is. But the thing is that he has lost a lot of basically everybody who could ever tell him that he was wrong and he would listen. They've gone increasingly insular. They don't know what they're doing. They've been chicken with their heads cut off. And this wasn't a decision in the last year, but Canada basically just let our housing market get completely out of whack as a way of sort of boosting, a specific generation's, wealth. And the consequences of doing nothing about that for 8 years are coming home to roost in the fact that like rent and mortgage costs have doubled under his tenure. Interest rates obviously didn't help the mortgage cost stuff too. And he took way too long to react to that. Housing has gone from like bottom of the barrel issue 10 years ago to top of the pile now. He fucked that one up. Like that's just his sort of cross to bear. And like he's way more unpopular than he should be if it's just like, people kind of like him, but they're sick of him. Like that would be nowhere close to as bad as this.
Let's take a sojourn into the global element of it, because the way that you've talked about the Liberals in Canada sounds a lot like the conversations that I was having about the Tories in England that you were seeing with Rishi Sunak, and now this election that's going to come up with the Liberals in Canada. Not only just we're going to lose, but like we're facing some possibly existential circumstances, and the Tories were able to avoid that. They still, face an uncertain future. But do you think that the Liberal Party in Canada is looking at something like that? I mean, obviously they've made this decision to try to avoid it, but how real is that possibility?
So the Liberal Party is in an incredibly bad position for a very specific reason, which is liberal parties have tended to get replaced. The history of British politics, to use that analogy, was the Liberal Party, now the Liberal Democrats, getting replaced by Labour as the main anti-Tory opposition. If the Liberal Party isn't careful, they absolutely could put themselves in such a hole that the NDP, the Social Democratic sort of Labour equivalent, eats their lunch, especially if the NDP finally replaces their extremely bad leader after this election. And there is an identity crisis at the center of the Liberal Party, because they don't know whether or not they want to be a sort of centrist, sort of, I don't want to say Manchinite party, but like Wall Street, K Street, socially progressive, but sort of fiscally moderate party.
The middle of the road technocrat, but business friendly.
Right. Or whether they want to be a more staunchly sort of Liz Warren sort of thing. And they can't decide. The party has kind of oscillated between these two things through history, which has been to its benefit, is that it can meet the moment of where it is. But the problem is that the party has become so much a cult of personality, not just under Trudeau, but under the last 3 decades of leaders, that there's no party left independent of the leaders and the personalities. And so you let leaders stay on too long and put this party legitimately at risk of being replaced and becoming an irrelevance.
So who takes over now? What happens? People are going to be listening to this on either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. What has happened?
So Trudeau is staying on as interim prime minister. He is resigning as party leader. He will stay as prime minister until March. There won't be parliamentary sittings until March as well, so there's no risk of an election being called while the Liberals are, fighting amongst themselves.
Yeah.
The leading contenders are the finance minister who knifed Trudeau in the first place,
Yeah.
Bank of Canada governor, former Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, please God, no. Um, a few cabinet ministers, Nina Anand, Francois Philippe Champagne, Dominic LeBlanc, and then a former premier of BC, um, Christy Clark. Also, Canada's foreign affairs minister wants the job, but the problem is that she has an IQ lower than the Fahrenheit freezing point. So don't really think that she is a viable candidate.
And so they will decide at some point, but before March, when Parliament sits back down, who the new prime minister is, and then at that point, I assume it is just a slow march to whenever the election is, right?
Yeah, which could be immediately. This is going to be something akin to like the shotgun primary ideas that we're sort of throwing around. It'll be like a 6-ish week process. Probably a couple of debates. Mail ballots out to party members, and then just hope to God that the membership makes the right decision. I have
no idea who these people are that you just named, but if one of their names are Philippe Champagne, I am hoping for that person, if only to hear Donald Trump repeatedly pronounce it over and over and over again. I think
the Trump pronunciations of Francois Philippe Champagne would be high comedy. Yes,
Philippe Champagne. So Trudeau. What leads the obituary of the Trudeau era in Canada?
Significant progressive achievement, reducing child poverty, reducing carbon emissions, significantly reducing the cost of childcare, and mass political corruption. This is a man who pressured the independent director of public prosecutions or the attorney general to overrule the director of public prosecutions to cut a favorable deal to a Quebec company weeks before a Quebec election, explicitly so he could curry favor as a Quebec MP. He literally said it in the meeting himself. This is a man who tried to give a $1 billion government contract to a charity that had paid his mother nearly $350,000 for speeches. This is a man who has reckless disregard for any sort of ethical thing. He has taken more free trips as prime minister than basically anybody else. Half of his cabinet are under ethics investigation at any given point. His new finance minister, the one who used to be his babysitter, by the way, because this is the man who was literally being governed by his wedding party, is under ethics investigation again for being too cozy with one of the big oil barons in Canada. And by the way, this is the same PM who tried to get away with appointing said cabinet minister's sister-in-law as the ethics commissioner while her brother-in-law was under an ethics investigation.
Yeah.
This party is the corruption that this party tries to get away with in Canada would be if this were an Armando Iannucci C plot, it would get dismissed in the writer's room as too far-fetched.
Just because it's so brazen.
It's so brazen.
And why has that not been a bigger deal?
Partially because that is the DNA of the Liberal Party. We keep doing this. The last Liberal government got taken down for giving out fake government advertising contracts to favorable companies to bribe Quebecers to not vote for separation.
Yeah.
So like this is just the liberal way in Canada. And the other reason is realistically the Conservatives ran two really bad leaders in the last two elections. So, we got lucky to win those.
Well, let's look ahead to that election then. So it might happen immediately. By the time that the Liberals get their house in order, we could see a reordering of things. Are we going to see the Conservatives return to power?
Oh yeah, for sure. 1,000%. Like it is so bad that like even the most optimistic scenarios are the Liberals like close the gap. They're not winning. The Conservatives.
So
are going
this sounds a lot like the last British election. Then that it wasn't a question of whether or not Labour was going to win and Keir Starmer was going to be prime minister. The question was whether or not, you know, the Conservatives had an existential question on their hands that they would be, you know, the boom of the Reform Party would be something that would be, you know, absolutely ridiculous. It sounds like that's a very similar situation to what the Liberals face in Canada.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, the Conservatives are going to win, but the question is whether or not they're going to win 250 of
Yes.
340 seats, or whether they're going to win 200, and whether or not the Liberal Party is going to, you know, be a fighting institution moving forward, or whether they're going to be or whether or not they're going to have basically given the opposition three terms, or the then incoming government 3 terms, and basically said you can do whatever you want because we're not a viable force. Which is why I've been screaming for Trudeau to resign this whole time. I've never been under the impression a new leader can win this thing, but I am aware of how public opinion works, and you have a significantly better chance of stopping your opposition from completely dismantling your entire agenda if they have a more narrow majority than if they have a landslide.
Yeah, and I guess especially in the parliamentary systems where, you know, the leader of the body has so much outsized executive power, I think those metrics tend to be a little bit more drilled into the minds of Canadians and the UK, in that if you get blown out, you can pretty much do some back of the envelope math on how many elections it's going to take for you to narrow the gap to have a chance to take things back, right? Because gigantic swings do not happen all that often. And so you can just look at the idea of like, okay, if you take a huge loss, then it's like, all right, then it might take 2 or 3 bites of the apple to really even get out of the basement.
Yeah, I mean, it's even true with House elections in the U.S., right? Like, the scale of the Republican win in 2014 basically meant that it was always going to be a two election path for Democrats to get it back, and you know, it's the same thing here. Like, if the Liberals have, you know, 80 seats in the next election, they probably wouldn't be able to win in 2029, but they'd at least be vaguely competitive. If they win 30, which honestly might be even high for what Trudeau would have managed, then give them 3, you know, come back in 2037 or whatever.
How much do you think the interregnum here before we get to an election is going to be the Liberal Party apologizing or distancing themselves from Trudeau in a way that, to tie it back to American politics, you know, and obviously this is not the same scenario, but, you know, Kamala Harris was not really able to do with Joe Biden. You know, how much distance do you think that they're going to be able to put in between?
I think there's going to be the thing about a real contest means that there are going to be people who don't have ties to Trudeau in the same way, and
who are going to get mean,
who are going to be able to sort of stake out that position, and if those positions are popular, then I think you will see the established candidates suddenly be more willing to say, I disagreed with the Prime Minister in private on X.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was bound by cabinet confidentiality. Whereas, you know, which, to be clear, Kamala could have and should have said, you know, I disagreed in private. I don't air my private disagreements in public. I back my president.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a line that can work. Because the thing is that, like, there are good parts of the record. There are legitimately very impressive accomplishments. But, you know, this is the one thing I will say, you know, a lot of my liberal readers tend to be like, oh, well, it's just a comms issue, or it's just mis and disinformation that causes people to dislike the government. And I'm like, no, there are plenty of reasons on solid policy grounds to not like this government, which is namely that they've done a hell of a lot. If you have a young child, this government's great for you. If you don't, you're up a creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
Like, the government's done nothing for you. So, like, it can be nauseating listening to certain defenders of this government because they've done great things. They've also screwed up a hell of a lot.
Yeah. And now it has come to an end, and we are going to see the rise of the Conservatives in Canada. Who is at the head of that party?
So the Conservatives are led by Pierre Poilievre, who J.D. Vance referred to as Mitt Romney in a French accent.
Okay.
Which is funny because Poilievre is not actually French, despite having a French sounding name.
Yeah.
But Poilievre is like a fairly mainstream Canadian conservative, actually slightly more progressive in some ways than his predecessors. Openly pro-choice, openly pro-gay marriage. When he ran for leader, not this time, but the time before, like his lead off in that leadership debate was to go to the leading French newspaper in Canada and say, I voted against gay marriage in 2005. I was wrong. It's been a great success. Like, people refer to him as some sort of like cultural conservative, and on, you know, quote unquote woke issues. He did Jordan Peterson's podcast, you know, whatever. He can be there. But in terms of the more traditional markers of social conservatism, he has disavowed the pro-life movement. He has disavowed the anti-gay marriage movement. Like, he's by no means a radical, and you know, even on fiscal issues, you know, he is sort of bombastically opposed to liberal spending in a general sense. But the second you try and pin him down on any
what gets cut,
program, it's not like he's.
It does sound like, I'll tell you, JD might have nailed him.
All of the progress.
It sounds a lot like Mitt Romney.
Yeah, no, in fairness. But yeah, no, it's just, he's a fairly conventional conservative. And it pisses me off when people are like, oh, he's Canadian Trump. No, he's not. Like, let's be very real. I think he'll be bad for all the reasons I don't like conservative governance. Spoiler alert, I'm a liberal. I don't like conservatives. But Trump is Trump. Trump is a unique
Well,
thing.
also, I
And
just
if you
feel
call
like,
every conservative you don't like Trump, like, you're just completely dismissing what Trump actually is.
yeah, and also I think it just kind of, it's just a lazy catch-all. It's just, you know, like, oh, it's because Trump has kind of become like Coca-Cola or Kleenex or something. It's just, he's just a brand that people like to throw around. So he looks to be kind of slated as the next Prime Minister of Canada. The only question is when, which leads me to my final question here. Trudeau Netflix vanity documentary series, when?
Oh my God. I mean,
You think he can move into the same block as Harry and Meghan, and they can just all do a vanity baking series together?
I mean, I said this the last time that you and I were on here, but like, his post prime ministership is going to be fascinating for some reason. He's an idiot. He's always been an idiot. He was never supposed to be the one who, because his father was prime minister. He was never supposed to be the one, but the one who was supposed to be the sort of heir politically, passed away in an accident years and years ago. So he had to kind of do it, but he's an idiot. So like, usually former prime ministers or former presidents, you know, write books and go on the lecture circuit. He can't do that. So yeah, he'll probably need some goddamn money, and late 2026.
I think that's the move. That's the move. You know, there'll be something like Blinding White North or something, and it'll just be a 5-part soft focus series about the hard life and great accomplishments of Justin Trudeau, and it'll end with like a useless final 6th episode where he's like fitting prosthetic legs on kids somewhere.
Oh God, yeah, no, that's the absolute kind of virtue signaling nonsense that he's doing. Also, can I tell your listeners a very fun Trudeau family story?
Let's go.
So, Pierre Trudeau, Justin's father, divorced Justin's mother in the 70s while he was prime minister. Justin is now separated from his wife while he was prime minister. So apparently that was the family, but. Margaret Trudeau, the one who, again, that charity that Trudeau tried to pay $1 billion in government money to, she kind of went crazy in the late 70s and early 80s, including a repeated sexual relationship with, I believe it's Keith Richards, was one of the Rolling Stones.
Really? Well, she's the one that everybody always talks about with Castro, right? Because doesn't Trudeau get the conspiracy theory about that he's Castro's spawn?
Well, because Pierre and Margaret used to go to Cuba fairly frequently, and Margaret,
and things were obviously,
it's not
rocky.
The most monogamous person in the world. The Castro thing is hilarious. It's just a great conspiracy.
Yeah.
Politics.
This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you would like to be part of our team. If you would like to be in receipt of 2 bonus episodes each and every week. In fact, you can go ahead and check out TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That is really where our Substack is. It resolves to our Substack. If you're interested in the economic realities of me flipping from Patreon to Substack, the TLDR, it's going well so far. But if you want some hard numbers, well, you can go ahead and figure that out over there. It's a good time. 2 bonus episodes each and every week. $3 a week. If you'd buy me a cup of coffee. Or if you buy it at our annual price, over 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100, it's you making me a cup of coffee. That's how much it costs. Very, very, very economical. Anyway, here's some of the stories we didn't have time to get to. Republicans are figuring out how to get the MAGA bus, that is essentially the biggest pillars of Donald Trump's agenda, through in one bill. Senate wanted to do it in 2. The House wants to do it in 1 because if they get anything through, it's going to be a miracle. So they'd rather have everything on 1. And so far, that appears to be the case. One of the things that they think might be possible is the debt limit to be put into a reconciliation bill. So, all right, here's the big question. It is thought that using reconciliation, which allows you to pass a bill on 50 votes versus 60 votes, that is the Senate filibuster majority, is going to be the way that Donald Trump gets his agenda through, because they don't believe that the Democrats are going to help with any of the big things that really, really matter to Donald Trump's agenda. And the 3 biggest things are the Trump tax cuts, extending those, the deportations and border stuff, right? And then energy. So allowing drill, baby drill, blah, blah, blah. That's a no-go for Democrats. And so you want to pass it all on reconciliation. There are a few things that are going to be a problem. Number 1, you've got budget hawks in the House who do not want anything to raise the national debt at all whatsoever. So you're going to have to pair that with a lot of spending cuts. Then in the Senate, for it to pass reconciliation, you're going to need to get it through the parliamentarian, what they call the bird bath, the bird rule, BYRD. Reconciliation is technically a move that should only include things that directly involve the budget. Now, since governing is essentially manipulating the budget, you can stretch that to fit a lot of different things. Democrats did it twice. And so that's where you are. But Speaker Johnson just wants to get all that stuff up to the Senate so it can be the Senate's problem. His problem is getting enough people to vote for it in the House, because as we saw with his ascension to Speaker, you don't have a whole lot of leeway there. Johnson has emphasized his preference for reconciliation in terms of raising the debt ceiling, which is the other problem, is that they have to do a budget and they have to raise the debt ceiling. And he wants to do the debt ceiling via reconciliation. Quote, that way the Republican Party, the party in charge of both chambers, can get to determine what the details of raising the debt ceiling are. This is going to be rough. And on Friday's edition of the program, we are going to talk to Kirk Beto, and we're going to ask the question, is the Donald Trump 47th administration edition more competent than the 45th? Because that was a ramshackle operation. A lot of stuff was just kind of happening for the sake of happening, and especially legislatively, it was all over the map. This is a pretty high stakes maneuver, but I think we should open our minds to the idea that this version of Trump, at least in terms of the people he has around him, are going to be different. Also, we're at a different point in history. Donald Trump's coalition is a lot more secure, whereas before, some thought it might be a passing fad. Another element of Trump's administration are his nominees, and his nominees do not get more controversial than Tulsi Gabbard, and that is why Senate Democrats have delayed her confirmation hearing. Senator Mark Warner said he opposes early hearings, citing missing FBI background checks, ethics disclosures, and questionnaires. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard is nominated to be the National Intelligence Director. The Gabbard team says that her background check is complete and everything is going to go as fast as possible. That means that the hearing could be delayed until late next week or the week after. Committee Chairman Tom Cotton says he wants pre-inauguration hearings. Trump's team has criticized the Democrats for the delays. Look, the Democrats want to make this as much of a circus as possible. In fact, what I would keep your eyes and ears peeled for are the grandstanding moments. For the Democrats that are interviewing these people, what clips do you think might well be involved in a future "this is why I am running for president" montage? Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, they were very, very, very well suited for getting their little clips. Oh, same with Elizabeth Warren, too. They were all very good at making a name for themselves, getting those sound bites that'll play well under the driving do 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 kind of beat that would go into a "why I'm running for president." Why am I running for president? I'm running for president to hold the powerful accountable. And then a clip. So, do you think that power should be unchecked? Do 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 do. That's what we're looking for. By the way, we might have a recurring guest to help us go over some of these hearings. Somebody that might be very well versed in Congress. You know, could load up her plate with congressional information. Or should we call it a dish? One more news story. This one actually intersects with two of my favorite worlds, politics and technology, and that is Mark Zuckerberg coming out and saying that they are wholesale changing a lot of their moderation policies, both on Instagram and on Facebook. They are no longer going to restrict political content. They are going to replace their fact-checking system with community notes, and they are algorithmically going to ease up on how much stuff falls into their net. We're going to bring on our friend, Tom Merritt, whom I spoke about this with on Daily Tech News Show. Here's that conversation.
So, Justin, the hell portal has closed.
It has. And I didn't expect for this to be so kind of dramatic and for it to come from Zuckerberg himself, be used as kind of a corporate talking point. But we had a conversation on the roundtable last week where there was some shuffling at Facebook. And I said the larger term thing that I'm seeing here is that we might be moving away from the fact check era. We might be moving away from the let's have an arbiter of truth, which, as I have said to you and the listeners for years now, is a hashtag hell portal, hashtag portal to hell, especially if you were going to have the leading edge be political speech, not because any one team lies or is more deceptive, but trying to fact check politics is like trying to fact check whether or not Dr. Pepper really is the most refreshing drink.
Or whether you have, in fact,
yes,
out pizza the Hut.
Yes, exactly. It's just that there's always a kernel of truth
Yeah.
that is then surrounded by hyperbole. And so this was a lot more dramatic, and it was even more nakedly infused with kind of something that's been whispered about a lot, not only in politics but also in technology, which is the vibe shift.
Yeah.
And to hear that specifically mentioned by Zuckerberg was something that kind of surprised me. But then again, he put Dana White on the board the day before, so
The
we're in
president
a
of the
different era.
UFC, yeah.
Yeah.
It's it definitely shows, and I'm not trying to be pop psychologist to Zuckerberg, so I don't know if it's just in his makeup or if it's a recent thing, but he is willing to play to whatever field is setting the rules, and that's what's happening here. Is saying, hey, not just there's a new president or a new administration, but there's a new mood, there's a new feeling out there, and I need to make sure I don't lose people coming to Instagram and Facebook as well.
So there's a couple of things that I think are very important here. Number one, the fact that Zuckerberg even said, hey, we played along with government before, and we feel that government asked for too many things to be taken down. We did take them seriously, but now in hindsight, we believe that maybe it had gone too far. That's another sign that he's saying, look, this is not just, if you want to look at it just as cravenly as anything else, you could say, well, he was always a team player. It's just a different team now.
Right.
The other thing is that with his user base, which is getting older, both on Facebook and on Instagram now, they have not been king leading edge media for really 10 years at this point. Both of those data sets are getting older. When I was in Ohio for the Ohio Senate primary, where J.D. Vance was facing his toughest test against a Republican challenger, there was a big fight to see who was going to get the Trump endorsement. Vance had just gotten it. And so I go to a open town hall with Donald Trump Jr. and J.D. Vance. I'm in the back of the room. They open it up for questions. And Tom, when I tell you that fully half of these questions were to, at this point, two unelected people, can you get me unbanned from Facebook? I am not lying.
Yeah.
Like, there is a palpable sense amongst a segment, probably Facebook's most dedicated users, that have been very vexed by what they can and can't see on Facebook. And there's a million words that can be written about exactly why they feel that way. I think many are legitimate. Many are things that are drummed up by folks who want engagement. But there's no doubt that that was an issue. And this is Zuckerberg reacting to that.
Yeah. And again, just to be clear to people listening, it's fact checking, not moderation. So they're still going to do moderation. They're still going to have their independent oversight board, all of that. It's the fact checking part that's changing. And that is something that is algorithmically driven in a lot of cases. They're also pulling back on some of the algorithmic removals. And I have seen people who, I am guessing, I haven't asked them specifically, are not supporters of the incoming president, complain about having innocuous posts removed from Instagram. So I can imagine that if that's happening to everybody, that some people think, oh, it's happening to me because of who I am or what I say.
Without a doubt. And they're, I know this is going to be controversial.
Oh.
Part of this is that Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah.
Elon Musk did take some of the restrictions away, and that while certainly there are many people who have complained about Elon Musk's tenure on Twitter, and I don't believe it has been a perfect one. I think that there are a lot of things that have gotten a lot shabbier since he has taken over. Community Notes was a success, and I think we can say that now. And having a more Wikipedia-esque, imperfect but quick, but it does feel like there is a sense of judgment if you see something that is wrong, that it can sometimes be a little silly, a little catty in the way that the internet also rewards. That was the layer that wound up being more palatable than the way things were done before. And this goes back to something that we have talked about for a very long time. Social media lacked moderators. And I don't mean that in terms of moderation, the broad sense, but in the message board sense. There are admins and there are moderators. And admins are the hand of God. They can delete something from the face of the earth. Moderators are the policemen. They are just trying to enforce the law. Sometimes they are perfect, sometimes they are not. But in general, they are just humans that everybody hates. And that is what community notes are. Yeah. Community notes are just that. It is a citizens police force that is now going to be brought to Facebook on a level that it had not before.
Yeah, I never thought about it this exact way, but it's part Wikipedia, part Reddit. You know, it's got elements of both in it.
Yes.
Well, Justin, I had to get your take on this, so thank you for sitting down and chatting about it. If folks want to find out more of what you've got going on, where should they go?
Now, of course, you can find me at politicspolitics.com and anywhere you find podcasts online. Just search for Politics, Politics, Politics or Justin Robert Young. A big thank you to Tom Merritt and Daily Tech News Show. They've got a great briefing format now. If you haven't tried Daily Tech News Show or haven't listened in a while, go ahead and give it a spin. They're doing a great job over there. Happy to be a part of the program. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you would like to get bonus episodes. If you'd like to follow up with my writing, try and do more writing. I always say that, but this time I think I mean it. See if I'm lying. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. And now, back to Mr. Scrimshaw. All right. Anything else on your mind? Do you have any U.S. topics that are gnawing at you?
Why are they trying to do one bill? It feels very stupid to me to try and jam border, tax cuts, and everything into one reconciliation bill that just gives more people more parts to object to.
So, all right. Number one, I think that there's a really, really good conversation about this on exactly what the best move is, right? And I think it really depends on your game theory on where you think the weakest part of the process is going to be. And if you believe that the weakest part of the process is the House, which I think is pretty clear, and that you are just going to have to force people to vote for things that they don't want to, you're going to have to back people down, then I think the thought is if they're going to already hold their nose, you might as well make them hold their nose for one thing as opposed to hold their nose twice or three times for three different bills to get it to the Senate. And I don't know what the best strategy is. I mean, their ability to pass things through the House is really, really thin. It was not made any easier by the fact that Trump decided to poach half of his cabinet from House members. But it's I don't know. I really don't. I don't know whether or not it's the smart move in a bunch of bad options, or if it's so dumb they're gonna just retreat from it nearly immediately.
I just don't know how the deficit hawks vote for a bill that both massively increases spending and massively cuts taxes. I just don't know how you put that together, especially if you're doing.
But like you're gonna have to do that, right? So it's like the conversation before was what goes first? Does the border go first, or do taxes go first? With the idea being that taxes are going to be an easier lift than the border will be, because you have the border purists that are going to be obsessive about, well, this has to be exactly everything that I want and nothing less. And then with the taxes thing, it's going to be an easier lift, but you still do have a lot of these like northern state or blue state Republicans that you need everybody's vote for that are going to want SALT deductions and stuff like that a lot of other Republicans are not going to want. And obviously the tax bill was always going to be a hard one to swallow for some people, because the budget score on it's going to be ridiculous, especially if you're going to try to extend it for a long period of time. So I think the concept is you're never going to make anybody happy on this. Everyone's going to have to eat something that they don't like. And so do it all, try to do it all on one. And it's better to do that than have two different fights on this. The question really is, how much juice does Trump have? Because I think it was kind of underreported, at least in terms of the commentary class, that like it was pretty impressive that Johnson got in on one ballot, you know, especially with the kind of stated opposition that he had. Like, that was well played. That was about as clean as you could possibly play that. And he allegedly did not make any promises that now might bite him in the butt like Kevin McCarthy did. So if part of that is Johnson and Trump working together to move things forward, maybe that's what they feel is the strongest thing, or it's literally just something that Trump thought at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend and it'll change in 2 days. Who knows?
I would do the border bill first, because one, that's an issue that even the deficit hawks are going to feel like this was why people voted for us, so we need to do it.
Yeah.
And then, but the other thing is, now, I don't know how much you actually believe Doge is going to, like, find any material spending cuts, but at least if you punt that, if you punt the tax cuts, you can at least give Elon and co. some time to find some fig leaf of spending cuts that they can use to,
well, I mean, look, the problem isn't finding places to trim fat. The question is actually trimming the fat, right? And so,
finding politically expedient places to trim fat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There are plenty of elements of the American federal government of just either unspent money that can be clawed back, or like various different things that you can put together. Now, is it going to take a dent out of the kind of stuff that you want to do? I don't think so. I think that CBO score is still going to be ridiculous, but also I don't think Trump cares. And you know, there are a lot of budget hawks, but outside of Thomas Massie, they all voted for Johnson, who they hate. So, you know, at a certain point, you know, apparently the thing that had Self, who was one of the holdouts on the Johnson vote, turn around was literally just Trump calling him from the golf course and saying, hey, you supported Nikki Haley. How'd that work out for you? And he backed down. So it's like, you know, I don't know. I've always said that all power is future power. And, you know, especially in a second term, a president's power dissipates like the value of a car that's being driven off a lot. But, you know, Trump is a little bit different. I think everybody understands in the Republican Party that there's going to be a movement there that they will have to answer to. And we'll see. We'll see. I will say this. If they get away with it, if they actually do pass it as one bill, it'll be really impressive.
Yeah, for sure. I just feel like that's the thing. It's just, it feels like putting all your eggs in one basket. Now, in fairness, they do have 2 tries to do it in one bill, right? Because if they fail this year, they can always just come back to it with, you know, in next year's fiscal year. Like, they do have multiple opportunities to do it, but it just feels like one of these things where, I mean, this is why the OG Build Back Better fell apart, was that there were so many disparate parts of the bill that you could find enough reason to object to something in it.
Yeah, but by the time that they really started cranking on it, Biden was already kind of losing a little bit steam. So I think that part of the reason, I don't know, if we're going to go back to the theory of mind of Donald Trump, that everything is a real estate negotiation, then this is classic, right? Because he's saying, all right, everybody eat the entire thing right now. And then people are going to say, no, I object to this, I object to that, I object to that. And at least at that point, you now have a negotiation leverage point to say, okay, well, if we take this out and we separate this out to the second bill, then we still better get the votes to go forward. But this is going to be the mediated way that we split it, as opposed to having it being split from the planning side and then having everybody object to it at that point.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, if you think of it from the standpoint of you can have it be one bill and then it becomes 2, but you can't really have them be 2 bills and then they become 1.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a fair way of looking at it.
But also, I don't know. The big thing that I'm going to talk about with Kirk Beto is the question of, like, hey, we watched this campaign, and Trump 24 was unlike Trump 16 and Trump 20 in that it was kind of ruthlessly competent. And I don't think any fair understanding of this race that doesn't say that is accurate. We have not seen him govern any other way but incredibly chaotically. But what if this is also competent? What if he also has a competent administration, which we really didn't see, but maybe? I don't know. I don't even know what the standard would be, what it would look like. But I was kind of surprised that Johnson got in on one ballot, and it seemed really coordinated. It seemed like they pretty cleanly boxed out the opposition and put him through.
That is, I think, the thing. I think I saw you tweet about this morning, and I've sort of been sort of tossing it around in my head when I haven't been losing my mind about Canada. But like, I don't have a lot of respect for Mike Johnson as a political operator. I have mostly been extremely, unenthused by his performance.
He's always reminded me of the Hudsucker proxy. Like,
right.
He had no idea he was going to get the job, and now he's just kind of doing his best. But then again, it worked out well for Tim Robbins.
But the thing is that in this case, he actually did legitimately seemingly do a really good job. Like, no embarrassing concessions to Chip Roy. Got it all done on Friday. Nobody will care that he quote unquote lost the vote at first and then had to flip them.
Nobody. I mean, the only reason why anyone even cared about that vote was because it was such a S show with Kevin McCarthy. That's the only reason why we were even watching the vote. But even if he would have failed on one ballot, Democrats have made Nancy Pelosi sweat to do it on two ballots to show that they meant business. It's not like that's like totally unheard of. It's impressive to do it on one, especially the way that they did it, where you had the few that nobody but the two voiced for other candidates. You had a bunch of people that held back, but then the people that held back had to go vote for Johnson, or else Hakeem Jeffries would be the speaker. So he gets all those votes on the record, squares it down to two, and then, Trump comes off the links with an Arnold Palmer, ice cubes clinking, and says, really? And that was it. They were done. It's only the obsessives like us that were like, watching the minute by minute of it.
Yeah, of course. And like the thing is, I mean, sort of getting the rebels who didn't vote against him to be like, yeah, you can have your show forced and I'll respect you for it. But like,
yeah,
come on, you know what you need to do. No, it was genuinely impressive. The thing for me is I don't know now how to I don't know what to do with this information now, because it's like, is this the new baseline, or is this just, the fact that it was January 3rd and by January 6th they need to certify Trump's election, so the rebels never really had the leverage that they wanted to have.
But also, that's
fascinating, though.
That's the other question, is like, where is the state of the fiscal conservative? I don't know where it is. I mean, I know that the baseline party, the Republican Party, is more of a populist position. That outside of your Thomas Massey's, who are, that's kind of his whole personality. I don't quite know where that constituency is.
Yeah, but the thing is, you don't need that constituency to be very big when you have a majority of like 3.
True. I mean, and that's the other thing. But like, Chip Roy voted for him.
Like Mike Johnson is playing this game on a significantly higher difficulty setting than
anybody.
Speaker in the first Trump term. Why am I blanking on his name?
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan. Thank you. What a forgettable human being.
I'm sure he's banging out reps right now listening to the podcast. All right. Evan Scrimshaw, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Political writing, Scrimshaw Unscripted.substack.com. I'll figure out something for my sports writing when Canada is not drowning me. Scrimshaw Show over on my YouTube channel. I've tweeted the link out a couple times. Twitter, Addy Scrimshaw. I don't know if I already said that. I am ostensibly on Blue Sky, but I'm sorry, it didn't happen. So, Twitter is the place.
I look at Blue Sky like they looked at Camelot in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like it's a silly place. I don't know. It seems really intense, Blue Sky.
Because it's all the worst parts of progressive Twitter, right? It's the scolds, the purists, and the true believers.
Yeah. Well, I have an account. I think I've accidentally wandered in there once or twice, but
I try to remember to tweet my columns in there and do zero actual commentary.
I don't know. Someone will get mad. The weirdest thing is that it's just, and I love everybody that has tweeted me or emailed me that I should get on Blue Sky, but if somebody keeps telling you, hey, when are you showing up to the party? We're having a great time at the party. It means that they're not having a good time because they have enough time to tell you and they want somebody else to show up. So
yeah, for sure.
There's that. All right. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, bud.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you want to send us an email, you can do so, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Follow, find, and share clips of the show on TikTok, Justin R. Young. That is the same name on Instagram and on Twitter. Follow us on the YouTube, where we speak to you. Well, we visually do it. And also, by the way, we're expanding our set here. I don't know if you guys can tell. Well, things are coming together. Things are coming together. We got new lenses coming. We got new cameras coming. You guys can't see it, but the set is very, very cleaned up. Anyway, we got new fun stuff coming for you visually. So go ahead and check that out on YouTube. That is Politics is the YouTube account, by the way. Support us with a one-time donation. It is paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. You can send things to our post office box, 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Again, that is P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. You can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. It's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100, but it is only at the founding Titanic tier that you get your name read at the end of the show, like these fine folks. L3PO, P-Paw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria Young, my fantastic mother, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want to join their ranks? Head on over, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. On Friday's edition of the program, we're joined by 2 of our favorites. We ask Kirk Beto, what happens if this is a competent Trump administration? What does that look like? We also get into a little journalism stuff. It's pretty good. And also Jeff Maurer joins the program, and we talk about the current lay of the Democratic land and other fun stuff. He's great. Anyway, that's coming up later in the week on Friday. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.